On a recent interview on Capturing Christianity, Greg Koukl asked some questions to atheists, and it had to do with why atheists are so passionate about what we do. And he said that from his point of view, atheism should end up being sort of like nihilism, where there shouldn't be any meaning, there shouldn't be any passion. So before I get into that, let me just show you a quick clip of what he said on the Capturing Christianity channel. Here we go.
So I'd be curious to hear their response. What is it? Well, we care about truth. Why? How does truth itself become virtuous, since there cannot be any virtue in atheism? Virtue is a moral quality, okay? And anyway, evolution doesn't choose for truth. It chooses for reproducibility, that's all, not for truth. And many have made this point, including C.S. Lewis and Alvin Plantinga and others like him. So I'd be curious what an atheist had to say about that.
So the Faithiest Atheist would like to drop a few rocks into the shoes of Greg Koukl here, if I can, and hopefully other Christians who agree with his methodology. And by the way, he's the author of a fantastic book called Tactics, seen here. It's a great book. If you haven't read it, make sure you get the post-10th anniversary edition. And he's all about learning from atheists and finding out what we believe and why we believe it before getting into the possible cracks into our worldview in hopes of bringing us over to the Christian worldview. And I like that approach. It's not about barraging with facts and ideas or demeaning us. It's about learning and engaging. So I love that about the book. What I've noticed with his question that we just played and with his body language, he is saying that atheism eventually has to lead to nihilism, and you can tell by the way he was moving around and sort of in a mocking tone. That kind of undermines everything that's in the Tactics book. If you're trying to engage, respectfully and gracefully with atheists, you've kind of started off on the wrong foot if they see you acting like that. If they see you depicting and describing atheism in that way. And let's say it's true. Even if it's true, if they see you acting like that, then they're probably going to roll their eyes and not want to engage anymore. And then all the brilliance inside the Tactics book is out the window, or at least set back. So before I respond to that actual question that he asked about why we're so passionate and why we care, the first thing I want to say is that even if you're right, even if meaning and reason and logic and morality all boil down to nothing and we have no reason to care if that's the case, even if that's the case, don't tell us that. If we're in a useful delusion, don't try and pull that out from under us right off the bat. You're going to make us angry. It's our useful delusion. It's what we believe in. It's our religion, so to speak. So watch how you present it. Say something like, "I'm not sure I could believe that because I worry that I would think this," or "I've heard from this accredited philosopher that it would be this, and so that scares me." That's fine. That makes perfect sense. But the way he went about his delivery of that line to Cameron Bertuzzi in that clip we just played, it makes me know that it's just all kind of mockery to him. And so then I wouldn't necessarily, or I'd be less likely to want to have a respectful conversation with somebody who thought like that. And again, that will be even if it's true. But to answer his actual question about why do atheists care about what's true and why do we have our passion, why do we have an apologetics of our own, but for atheism, in my opinion, he's right that evolution doesn't gear towards truth. It gears towards that which is still here. Whatever reproduces better is still here. I would say in some cases that is truth. Sometimes truth does make the cut. And I would say that if we couldn't reach truth at all, we wouldn't have air conditioning and satellites. But we do have air conditioning and satellites, and a lot of us probably are here because of that. Not only being able to talk like this, but probably a lot of us are still alive because of the fact that we could have climate control settings sometimes that save us from outdoors. So we are able to reach the truth with our thought processes. It can happen, or we wouldn't have these things that we have. but I don't know that it's always truth. And I think sometimes, for instance, propaganda, falsehoods can dominate, even though they're not true, they still dominate. Case in point, take whatever you believe. You watching right now, you could be a theist or an atheist. You could never have heard of religion. You could be completely apathetic about religion, and you still know there are hundreds of millions of people out there, billions of people out there who are wrong to some degree about some of their narratives that they find, precious and worth defending and upholding. You know they're wrong to some degree. I'm not saying that everybody's completely wrong, but you are aware of other religions. And if you believe in one religion, then you can include atheism as one of those other religions that are just not true. And so you know that can thrive and flourish. So I would say that, yes, evolution doesn't always gear towards truth, but it does. There are times where truth and what survives can reach the truth. That there is some overlap there. There has to be at this point with scientific discoveries and the successes that we have. But I would say that sometimes natural selection is really interested in who's still here. So if we use like natural selection as a person, or as a mind that's looking over, at everything, natural selection is just kind of keeping notes as to seeing what's still here. And in the case of humanity, what if we have different wiring systems in our brains that we have like competing narratives within us? And one of those wiring systems is like our self-interest nature, which is where you really want to look out for yourself. The second one would be like a cooperation goal where you want to work with other people. And then a third wiring would be like a zealotry system, where you really focus on something that you think is much more important than yourself. So when you're really zealous about something, and by the way, zealotry can be wonderful. So I'm not picking on zealotry here, but you take an idea and you say, this is more important than me, and this needs to endure more than I do. And I think we all have that. In case in point, here's all these atheists with all these passions and logging on to apologist channels and making podcasts like I'm making now. So we all have the tendency to be zealous about something. I'm not saying every single person has to be a zealot about something, but we think there are things that are really important, and I think this is part of the zealotry wiring. And I think any human can do this, and I don't think you have to have religion to do that. You can ask, why do we have that? If there's not a religion, if a deity didn't assign it to us, why do we have it? I would say natural selection is looking to see what's still here, and if there are zealous groups on the planet that are working together and getting things done, and they're taking care of each other, and they're flourishing far beyond other groups where people are just watching out for themselves, or even like a group who's just like with no standards, they just like, oh, I'm just going to help you no matter what. They might not be able to take care of themselves either. But a group that's zealous, they have standards, and they're keeping each other aligned with those standards. And they see themselves as them against the rest of the world sometimes. You don't have to always be zealous where you're against everybody. But they see themselves as this really tight unit, and they're helping each other and they're holding each other accountable. The natural selection might say, you know what, these guys are doing better than everybody else. They get to still be here. They get to keep trying. So it could be that hundreds of years, thousands of years, hundreds of generations, thousands of generations later, we're all descendants of those zealous humans. So that in the past there were humans who weren't as zealous. Maybe they were more selfish, maybe they were more cooperative. But then the ones who acted together as a group more fiercely, even if they didn't believe the truth, but they were farming correctly, they were hunting better, they just had more kids. Natural selection would say, these guys, they win. They get to keep trying. And so then we all inherited that. I don't think that we're all zealous all the time. I think that cooperation and selfishness, I think we're a blend of those three wiring systems, so that sometimes you're looking out for yourself. Sometimes you want to be helpful to others. Sometimes you believe in something that's higher than yourself, and you want to really defend and uphold that, and you want to push that more than take care of yourself, and you really bond with other people that believe that. And sometimes I think we're just a mix of those three. And sometimes these three wiring systems can be at odds with each other. Sometimes they can line up. Sometimes two can be against one. Something changes, and then these two are suddenly against this one. But we have all three of those kind of like a menu of options to choose from. And that's why I think that humans are like this. So when he says, why are you passionate about it and why do you care about truth? Well, what if it's true? What if what I just said is true? What if we are a combination of those three wiring systems and we're all trying to survive as best as we can? We all want to live in peaceful, productive communities and raise healthy families in those peaceful, productive communities. And sometimes we think that groups with different worldviews aren't as good at it or potentially causing problems that help us get to that point. And then you might say, if you're a theist, well, who cares? What if we all live or die? It doesn't really matter. It's all meaningless anyway. Well, if we have that zealotry wiring, then there's something in our brain, and maybe it's, it's a lie, but there's something in our brain that says this is what matters. This is different than a preference or an opinion. This is different than I like this ice cream over this cake, or I like this sports team, or I don't care for this sports league. There's something in our brain that says, no, this is different. This matters more. This is something worth talking about. And I think we all have that. And there's some neurologists that say maybe sociopaths don't, but most people have that extra zealotry wiring. And if it's all chemicals and if it's all random, then that's just the way it is. If it just turns out that that's reality, then those would be the facts on the ground. And that could be why we're all this way. So I wanted to, and I'm not saying there's, in my channel, I'll talk about different books and I'll talk about different scientists and why I think this, and I'll be in different debates. I've done about a dozen of these conversations so far on other channels. I hope to do some more. So I'll talk more about the science as to why I think this later. But just to answer Greg Koukl right now, I think that's why you see a lot of atheists who are this way, who care about truth and who are passionate, is because we have those three wiring systems. And then again, if I'm wrong, even if we're fooling ourselves, try not to present this idea that atheism has to lead to nihilism in the way that you did in that channel, because I think that's a showstopper. That's sort of like a David Wood mentality. That's more like a warrior apologist mentality. One last thing I want to bring up about David Wood. He had a debate with Matt Dillahunty a few years back, and one of the first things David Wood said was, I find your position intellectually repugnant, but I'm going to be respectful with you. But just the fact that he said it that way, even if he really did think that, it probably caused a lot of atheists to roll their eyes. It was a bad start. Now, I know David Wood would not care about that. He would say, hey, I'm sorry that hurt your little feelings, but logic exists and reason exists and right and wrong exists. And I wouldn't have brought in Nabil Qureshi if I had just said, hey, come in here and put your feet up and make yourself at home. That's what David Wood would say. And actually, Mike Licona would have said, yeah, it was me that taught him to make himself at home and put his feet up. But in order for Nabil Qureshi to meet Mike Licona, he needed David Wood. He needed a warrior apologist. So I'm picking on David Wood here, but you apologists need your warriors too. And if you're going to have the warrior mentality, then discard what I just said. But if you're going to try and do what Greg Koukl talks about in the Tactics book, then hopefully what I said will resonate with you.